All right. I think we're ready to get this show on the road. Let me turn on my light. That might be helpful. Can everybody hear me all right? I guess that's a great place to start. I've been playing with getting the ATEM Mini Pro put back into the mix of things, and so um, just wanting to make sure that things are that's better. Things are working as anticipated. So, all right, let me turn off the ringer on my phone and we can get this party started. Okay, so today I wanted to do something maybe a little bit different. I try to find different ideas for this show every week, but I don't always succeed. So today I wanted to take a little bit of a trip down nostalgia lane and detail some of the Linux tips that I wish I had known in 1997 when I got started with this. Um, uh, and I know I'm going to be showing my age by making this quote, but 25 years of Linux. What a long, strange trip it's been, to quote the great Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead. Um, so, yeah. Um, Things I wish I had known when I started using Linux. So, right off the bat, being self taught is often a longer journey than taking a class. So it didn't help that I was severely introverted as a younger person. Now I just don't care as much, and I'm willing to put my face on YouTube and make a fool out of myself on a regular basis. I'm afraid, but um, at least when I'm dead and gone, my family can go back and have a good laugh at some of the stuff that I put out. So in 1997, there weren't really any classes available on Linux in my area. Um, Now, at that time, I was attending the local community college, and they were still pushing the whole Novell NetWare, Banyan Vines, very Microsoft centric type of approach to teaching any sort of networking. So while I had some exposure to networking, uh, a lot of the Linux class didn't happen until later. So the first Linux class I took was either 2000 or 2001. I'd have to go back in school papers to put an exact date on that. But I remember distinctly we used a book called The Guide to Unix Using Linux. And it was an interesting class because the instructor was a former employee of Bell Labs. So that was kind of interesting. The next thing on my list, the concept of a multi-user environment was really still a foreign concept to me in 1997. Now, I mean, at that time, my exposure to computers was mostly 8 and 16-bit computers, which were mostly single tasking. Admittedly, the Amiga was multitasking, but it was single user, as were all DOS and Windows 3.1 or 3.x and 9x machines. They were all single user machines. meaning that you could only have one user logged in at a time. And, even when I did dabble with Microware's OS 9 on the Tandy Color computer, it was a lot for me to wrap my head around the concept of multitasking, multi-user at 12 or 13 years old when I had no real mentor to speak of at the time. And if anybody's old enough to remember, the state of documentation for computer hardware and software in the 80s was abysmal at best. So, I may have been exposed to the terminology, but I didn't really wrap my head around it until much later. Okay, the next thing I wish I had known more about or read more about, and in retrospect this makes a lot of sense, is the File System Hierarchy Standard. This originated in 1994 and was last updated in 2015. The FHS defines the directory structure in Linux. And yes, the directory structure in Linux in most cases mimics that of the Unix systems that came before it, but it provides, as the name suggests, a standard to be used across Linux distributions from various sources. Having known of this when I started with Linux in 1997 would have been very useful. Now, granted, I was dealing with dial-up internet and whatever books that I could scrape up the money to pick up at, Barnes and Noble, or at that point it would have been like Schuler's bookstore, which was a local store, and whatever mall bookstores were available, and they didn't really carry much in the line of Linux stuff, frankly. All right. Running command line programs. So this was something that was different from other systems that I had used in the past, but up to used up to the time I started with Linux. And it wasn't until I was going through instructions to compile and install the drivers, I believe, for a sound card. And no, they weren't all included in the kernel at that time, that you had to get separate sound card drivers and install those manually a lot of the time in the late 90s. But I didn't know that you had to do / and then your executable name if you were executing a script or a compiled program that was not in the system path, which I didn't have a full grasp of the concept of a system path at that time either. Yeah, these, a lot of these things aren't as relevant in 2022, but in 1997, they were, definitely hoops you had to jump through. Let's see. Another thing I wish I had known. Graphical interfaces on Linux will get better and in many ways surpass the status quo, meaning whatever Microsoft and Apple are putting out for a desktop operating system. There are a lot of concepts that exist in Mac OS and Windows today that actually originated on Linux first. The idea of an app store, I won't say Linux was the place it originated, but a place that was being developed in parallel, because they were early on trying to do graphical wrappers around the package managers. And as things progressed, the idea of an application store was adopted pretty widely across all operating systems. I believe with Microsoft being the last one to implement that. I could be wrong on that, but I know back in 2000, I believe it was, there was a company that put out a Linux distribution called Lindows. And one of their claims to fame, besides being sued into almost oblivion by Microsoft, was that they had this idea of a click and run store for installing software on Linux. So in 1997, when I started on Red Hat 4.2, now keep in mind this was before Red Hat Enterprise Linux, this was before Fedora, this was before CentOS. I started with Red Hat Linux 4.2, which came with the 2.0.30 kernel and a very rudimentary desktop that resembled Windows 95. It was probably the best thing you could get on Linux at the time, but it was kind of a hodgepodge of Windows 95 and CDE, the common desktop environment that was on Solaris and other commercial Unix versions in the 90s and early aughts. And this was before GNOME and KDE. This was before Mate and all the rest of the options that exist today. Or if GNOME and KDE did exist, they were like pre-alpha iterations. I wish I had known that networking played such a central role in how Linux and other Unix systems are organized and how they work behind the scenes. Specifically, having an understanding of TCP/IP was or would have been helpful, and much more helpful than the networking exposure I had at the time, which beyond dial-up was Banyan Vines and Novell NetWare. And for those who may be watching this or listening to this at a later date and might be too young to remember, Banyan Vines sat on top of Windows 3X and I believe 95, and was an early office networking option for Windows before the TCP/IP stack was added and included by default in Windows systems. Novell NetWare precedes Banyan Vines and was very popular through the 80s and 90s, and started with MS-DOS and providing office-type network access to MS-DOS systems, and later it was expanded to include Windows and other things that came available. And, in 97, I didn't realize how tricky it could be to get online with a Linux system. Thankfully, I had come up using Commodore Amigas in the 90s, and that was how I initially got online. And so I had always used external modems connected with a serial cable instead of using the internal modems, which were often an abomination called a Win modem, which only worked with Microsoft Windows, as the name might suggest. So those are all things I wish I had been more aware of. In the first year, the first couple of years using Linux. Thankfully, with the current state of things, with YouTube, with other video platforms, with other offerings that are out there through other avenues, it is much, much, much easier to get a hold of Linux and to get some, more formal type training for Linux than, 25 years ago. And again, what a long, strange trip it's been. And, anybody that starts off with Linux in 2022, I'm going to be very interested to see where the next 25 years takes us. Because it's, wow. I mean, we have come a long, long way. No longer is the best game on Linux called Xbill, which, let's see. I don't know. Oh, I suppose I should take my banner off. Xbill, if anybody may not remember, let's go here. Xbill was this little application, and you had this little cartoon character that was supposed to resemble one Mr. William Gates of a certain company in Redmond, Washington. And for every computer that existed on the screen, he would try to convert it to a Microsoft Windows machine. So, this was like the state of Linux gaming in 1997. And admittedly, I spent some hours playing this because it was humorous to me at the time. And this was, right before the whole Microsoft antitrust trial happened. So with that wonderful image on screen, I'm going to go back through and try to catch up on chat. So let's see. Good morning, 619 OTA. And yes, everybody, please smash the thumbs up button. It's much appreciated. I want to, maybe by the 1st of June of 2023, maybe be hitting that 5,000 mark and not have it take a whole nother year to get to 5,000 like it did to get to 4,000. Good morning, David. Welcome. And Brian, good morning. If I didn't say that before. So I like that webcam remote. Yep, it's very handy. I'm still trying to get used to having the webcam mounted up a little higher and behind my monitor. So part of the reason I zoom in is so I don't pick up the top edge of the monitor, which is like right there. So, let's see. I'm still trying to figure out my TrueNAS scale box, trying to figure out where to allocate an NVMe and 2 SSDs I have in the box that are not doing anything. Thinking about apps, VMs, but not sure. Brian, I'm afraid I haven't used TrueNAS Scale enough to know how to help on that one in particular. The best resource I've got for TrueNAS Scale is Tom Lawrence, who's ironically another YouTuber from here in Michigan. He's in the Detroit area, but he does a lot with TrueNAS products. It was a different Linux world back in '97. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I recall going to Microsoft and being able to buy Red Hat in a box off the shelf. Unfortunately, the Micro Center closest to me was in Detroit, and I didn't have reliable enough transportation in '96 to drive from where I'm at near Lansing, the capital city of Michigan, to Detroit. Um, so that was not an option for me, and I don't think we got a Best Buy in town until '98 or '99. I know when I first started using Linux, we did not even have a Best Buy. And now we've got one on each end of town. Um, it can be a fun journey for us geeks. Yes. Yeah. Ouch. Netware. Good morning, Tony. Um, for those out there who may not have big plans this afternoon, over on Quick Tech Solutions channel, on Tony's channel, you will find not only Tony but myself and David and TVJ and Willie Howe and a few others, Unky Joe. Um, I'm sure I'm missing one or two people, but we'll all be talking about tech uh, holiday gift ideas. So join us at 2 o'clock over on Tony's channel for that. Um, I hope you're okay with me doing a shameless plug. Maybe I should have asked before, but I'll ask for forgiveness now. Um, okay. Yep. Looking forward to this afternoon. I miss my Amiga 500. I've still got a couple of Amiga 500s. I've also got an Amiga Technologies 4000 Tower that I actually really need to go grab and bring over here. Um, let's see. David says in 1997, as I mentioned previously, I was coding C using an AT&T System 5 server and working daily on an Apollo Domain OS engineering workstation. Those were fun days. Yeah, I um, I remember seeing a lot of those Apollo machines, but I never got to put my hands on one. Um, Sound cards were a nightmare under older versions of Windows. Yes, but not quite the nightmare that they were on Linux. You at least didn't have to compile the drivers on Windows. um, um, let's see. And I've taken off the scroll message at the bottom. Good morning, Chris. Um, let's see. Wollongong TCP/IP add-on. I don't remember that one specifically, but I know there were some other ones as well. My first venture into networking was using Lantastic. Yes, that was one. I think we got a brief intro using Lantastic as well. I'd forgot about that product name. Um, Maybe I was trying to repress it all these years. For restaurant POS systems. Does anyone remember Apple Talk? Oh, yes. I never had the opportunity to set it up personally, but I definitely was on systems that used Apple Talk. Um, and actually, what is it? Neta Talk, I believe. Um, uh, so NetaTalk was the open source implementation of the Apple filing protocol. Uh, Implemented the AppleTalk protocol suite, allowing Unix-like operating systems to serve as print and time servers for Macintoshes and Apple IIs. So, um, let's see. I paid like $600 for a practical peripherals 14400 FXSA for my Amiga. I'm not familiar with that product. I remember practical peripherals. Um, oh, I guess the other Amiga I've got at my well, a house my dad owns. My sister is currently occupying it. I've got an Amiga 1200 that I towerized back in the mid to late 90s. And both the 600 or the 1200 and the 4000 towers have 68060 accelerators in them. So I should really dust those guys off and see if they actually still turn on. I recall Apple Talk. They used it at a record company my sister worked at. Got hired to do a little data entry back in the day. All right. I had the nightmare of initially being forced to use Token Ring at my day job. Yeah, when I was starting to take my networking classes at the community college, they were in the process of tearing out Token Ring because they had put everything over on NetWare, and it was a NetWare version that had the TCP/IP stack, which what was it? I don't know if that worked in tandem with or I don't know. There is also IPX, SPX on NetWare as well. Coax, T connectors, and end caps. Awful days. Yep. They passed that stuff around in class, but we never had to install it. I'm grateful. I half live at my local micro center about 10 to 15 miles from me. I'm still jealous of that, but I will take the occasional visit to Micro Center when I'm heading to Illinois. Unfortunately, they won't be open on Thanksgiving Day when I go down there for Thanksgiving. I may have to hit it on the way back on that following Sunday. Um, I watched Tom's videos. I don't know if he has this detailed information. I posted on his Discord and waiting for people to chime in and see what they say. Yeah. I'd love to hear more once you get it figured out. Um, I've been a Micro Center rat since '93. Um, yeah, what did we have here in town? We had a Circuit City briefly. We had, oh my gosh, I forget all the names of the computer places that have come and gone since I've been doing this stuff. Um, what was one of them called? Seems like there was one called something USA. I think was in the title. I don't know. It's been a while. Plug away. I finally went to the Micro Center in Dallas. It's a dump. Not impressed. Wish we had one of the better ones you all talk about. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Um, my friend Mike worked at GVP and got interviewed on RMC's YouTube channel. That's awesome, Brian. That is really cool. That's really cool. I met I went to an Amiga computer show in the late 90s with a buddy of mine, and I got to meet um, what was his name? Kermit Woodall from the guys that did the Image FX graphics package. Um, and I got to meet one of the Commodore engineers. He had a book. Dale Luck, I think, was his name. Um, all right, what do we got? What else we got? I had the pleasure of tearing out Token Ring and replacing it with TCP/IP Cat 4 once my day job fired the idiot running our development group. Wow. I I think it was already at Cat 5 before Cat 5e, but at Cat 5 when I came into things. Yes, 619 OTA Comp USA. That's the one. That's the one. um, PC Richards. I think there's still one open in New Jersey. Other local computer stores near Comp USA, Computer City, Software Etc., and Egghead. Yeah, we had a Software Etc. in the local mall, and oh, there was another one in the mall too that morphed into more of a video game store. So I used to go to all the Amy Expos back in the day. Yep. Um, from 1992 to 2002, I lived my life at local computer shows and sometimes CompUSA. That's fair. Um, once I had a job after high school, I tended to spend a lot of time in whatever computer store I could find that was within a reasonable driving distance. um, oh yeah, I recall local computer shows. Yeah, we had some that used to come around the Lansing, Michigan area. I think the guy's name was Richard Nagy or Nagy or something like that. Um, he would this computer show would come into town, once every quarter maybe, or at least twice a year, and they would fill up the biggest conference room in one of the local hotels. And oh my gosh, there was so much stuff. I wish I wish I had pictures from those days. Um, it was amazing. Um, yeah, the I know the 68060 accelerators that are in the two Amigas that I've got, the 1200 and 4000 Tower. My buddy had actually purchased the 4000 Tower new, and then a couple of years later, when it was apparent that nothing was going to ever come of Amiga officially because the assets had all been split up and sold to different people, He sold it to me at a very, very reasonable price. He took a big loss on that thing. But you know, it was great. It was great. Good time to be alive, and a lot of things that young people today will never experience because those days are just gone. You know. Let's see. I went to Egghead in Manhattan in the early or the late '90s. They only had software. We had one down the street from my local micro center. I've been to shows at stadiums and other places with large halls. Wow. I would have killed to see a stadium computer show. That sounds amazing. All right. So at the beginning of the live stream, you may have seen me finishing up the install. Well, the setup. I won't say install because this was an OEM, a clone of an OEM build that I've been keeping around and trying to keep updated. But this past week, I happened to discover, and I don't remember now because it's been one of those weeks. I don't remember now if it was on a website and an article I was reading, or if it was on another YouTube video I was watching. But I found a new set of instructions and a script for installing XRDP on Ubuntu. And so I wanted to run through this real quick here. I will be doing a dedicated video on this at a later time. Um, no. But let's see. Okay. So this is by far the easiest way I have found to do an XRDP install. Now, the first thing you want to check is that you are running your server is running X11 and not Wayland. So I actually need to close out of this, log out, and then here on the login screen, come down to the little cog and switch to Ubuntu on Xorg. This is an important step. Maybe not right now, but it will become more important later. Okay, so the instructions, and when I do the dedicated video, I will link to this other video or blog that I found. But you want to use wget to download the installer. It's a zip file. Okay. Put that in my downloads Okay, and then of course we need to unzip that file. As a rule of thumb, I recommend looking at any shell script that you download from the internet. And you don't have to understand all of it, but at least looking through, seeing what is available in the comments, you can get a fair idea of what is going to happen in the script before you run it. So this was last updated in May of 2022. And it's got some disclaimers, it's got some syntax information, it's going to talk about OS detection, and the key thing to know about this, and I'm not going to page through the whole thing, is that it does not run on Ubuntu 22.10 as of earlier this week when I first installed this. But this is the 2204 desktop, so we're gonna plug through. Chmod plus X makes it executable. And then there are a couple of switches we want to put in. -S is to enable sound, and -L is to do some customization on the XRDP login screen. And then it's going to prompt for a password. And it's going to run. Now, things to know about this. It works best on the GNOME flavor of Ubuntu. If you're running a long-term support version of Ubuntu, you're better off at this point. 20.04, 22.04. Anything else is it may install, but those would be unsupported releases. 22.04, I would suspect this will be coming sometime soon. They are, in fact, working on making this script compatible with other Ubuntu-derived systems, so your Linux Lite, your Pop! OS, among other things. Now, Pop! OS is going to be a bit of a wild card because they are working on a switch from using GNOME as a base to using their Cosmic desktop. And so all bets are off once they make that transition on if or when this script will support those systems. So right now, your best bet is the GNOME version of Ubuntu. Your mileage may vary on others. Okay, so in my notes, it was another YouTube channel called Dimension Quest. And maybe I can bring that up, and the host name is Burke Asbill. Fairly small channel, but there are some things on here that I definitely found useful, and I've told the man as much. And so definitely check out Dimension Quest, and I'll drop this in chat. So small channel, under 500 subscribers currently. Definitely worth a look. So you know, I like to help small people out because a lot of people have helped me grow over the last 5 years. So I will occasionally plug another channel when it makes sense. All right, so that's still doing its thing. Let me see if I can catch up with chat a bit. Let's see. I think this is the first one I missed. I remember going to a computer show with my brother-in-law, an orthopedic surgeon, to buy parts for 3 PCs to outfit his new office. That was a fun weekend building those systems. That does sound like a lot of fun. I used to run around all the vendors trying to find the best price on whatever I was shopping for. I did the same thing, Brian. Those were good times. Those were good times. So I definitely looped that show a few times. Yep. I remember that part of it well. Did the same. Tony says he did the same at large shows held in convention centers back in the day. So did David. That was some great workout by the time the show closed, with trips to the local bank for cash every couple hours. Oh my. I think we're all showing our age a little bit right now, but that's all good. Shows also hooked me in with some local computer stores where I became a regular and got great heads up and discounts on parts I was seeking. Yep. Unfortunately, I was so terribly introverted when I was doing this that I never really made those connections too much beyond collecting business cards. And unfortunately, a lot of the exhibitors from the computer shows weren't really local to me. They were a lot in Grand Rapids and Detroit, which is basically an hour in different directions from where I live. So, not the best the best thing for me to try to drive to in those days with unreliable transportation. I kept pretty local. Um, then I would compare what I got with my buddies who were shopping as well. Sometimes you would score some great used gear as well. Yep. Um, I used to harvest the box of keyboards for mechanicals back before anyone cared about them, nor made them trendy like they are now. Yep. uh, I went through a lot of keyboards trying to find keyboards that I liked, because there was no good source for reviews back in the day either. Hello, Catherine. Welcome. Let's see. Everybody else is just saying hi to Catherine, and um, let's see. All right. And Ken, good morning. Catherine asks about the gasket for the Arctic. I haven't been over to the post office in a couple of days, so it may very well be there waiting for me. Um, I may go over this afternoon just to satisfy my curiosity. Um, NMB with Space Invader switches were my jam back in the day. Collected 10 to 12 of them. All right. So, uh, installation completed. Please test your XRDP configuration. If sound option is selected, shut down your machine completely. Start it again to have sound working as expected. Okay. So, last thing I want to do before we restart the machine and attempt to connect to it. Actually, we can just log out and then attempt to connect to it. We are on 119. So I'm going to close out of this, log out. And then if we pop over to this screen, and not now. Okay. We are going to add a PC. And add that. And with a little luck, connect. And we should get a nice full screen Ubuntu. And look at that. Puts the home folder in the center of the screen, which is fine. I normally turn that feature off, but this is a fresh install, so yeah. So this is obviously running a virtual machine on Proxmox, but now that I've got a good way of making XRDP work on Ubuntu, I am going to start doing some more graphical tutorials on Ubuntu, and I could do them full screen, which is great. So there are several that I want to record, and some of them may get turned into shorts as well. I've, for whatever reason, I've received a little bit of a bump thanks to making some shorts. They're not doing superb, but they're getting some views, and I think the uptick in subscribers I've seen over the last couple of weeks is due in some part to the shorts that I've been publishing. So yeah, this is kind of cool with full screen Ubuntu, and it's not going to be something I'm going to play games on or anything like that. There's obviously some screen tearing and other things there, but it does do the trick. I still wish Mac OS had the automatic Windows snapping like Linux and Windows, but hey, it is what it is. Gotta keep caffeinated. So yeah, this is looking good, looking good. So, and then of course you've got all the stuff you can do in settings and whatnot when you're connected with RDP. So, yeah, that was what I wanted to show. I'm going to do a dedicated video on XRDP coming up, but I thought for those loyal people that come to the live streams that I would do this live and see if it bit me, which hey, it didn't, knock on wood. So yeah, that is really what I wanted to talk about today. I'm going to go ahead and log out of this, and that's that. So I'm going to bring myself back on full screen, I guess. Let's see. Ken says, my projects this week have been setting up a Cloudflare tunnel for my domain to do self-hosting, and then set up Guacamole to access through the tunnel. Very nice. I've done similar things, but I tend to use Zero Tier 1, which I have talked about before. Guess I need to bring this back on. So 0 tier 1 is, they call it global area networking. But combines the capabilities of VPN and SD-WAN. So the result is going to be very similar. And the great thing is that when you're not using it, you just flip the switch and turn it off, and no access to it. So, yeah. And it runs on all sorts of things. I'm not sure which NAS options. It's available as a Docker container for Synology, even. Not that I necessarily want to access my Synology directly online, but I guess somebody has found a use case where that would be useful, and more power to them, I suppose. Let's see. I'm stuck behind CGNAT, so I can't self-host in the traditional way. This has solved that problem. I'm not familiar with 0 tier. Yep, so 0 tier is one, and then I've just dabbled with Tailscale, which is very similar to 0 tier. The same basic idea with the whole virtual network idea, but it uses the WireGuard protocol underneath, where 0 tier built their own protocol. So useful software to know about, and yeah. I installed 0 tier on my Proxmox, one of my Proxmox machines, and I've been doing a little bit of work with some of the stuff at the library, and running some monitoring services this way as a test ground, I guess. So, yeah. And if you spent any amount of time around publicly funded institutions like libraries and other things, you'll know that we operate on a very thin budget. So anytime I can get something that is free to use, I am a proponent of. I just try to bridge the knowledge gap, shall we say, between myself and my coworkers, and I try to find stuff that is both free to use and easy enough that I can get at least two of my other coworkers decent enough instructions to be able to use it. So, yeah. I do believe 0 tier is in OpenSense. OpenSense documentation does have 0 tier listed. So that is a good thing. So yeah. All right. We're up to 8 people watching currently. That's great. That's great. More than a normal week. So thank you all for coming out. I appreciate this. This has been fun, and reminiscing about computer shows and days gone by is always a treat. I don't have a lot of people around me that appreciate such discussions, so it's a treat for me to reminisce a little bit about those things. And I should probably write something in my. I try to keep a journal of sorts in a LibreOffice writer document that I will record things from my day every day or every couple of days. And I should include something about the old computer shows and some of the different places that I've been chasing those shows around the area. Um, yeah, good times. Good times. Um, the internet was cooler back then too. Well, that's because we were all the cool kids that were connected to the internet back then. Um, you know, especially those of us who were connected directly to the internet and didn't have to jump through hoops using AOL or Prodigy or CompuServe. Although CompuServe, from what I've been told by other people that did use it, was a little more on the geeky side. Um, having numerical usernames and all that kind of stuff, and um, yeah, also the LAN parties. Yep, I never actually got to go to a LAN party, a good old fashioned back in the day LAN party, but I had tried to get some organized, but it was still the wild wild west, and if you weren't all running the same version of the game and the operating system, it was problematic at best to set up. um, so um, I belonged to CompuServe and Prodigy, too. Very different things, but both were run. Yeah. Um, let's see. Roger, we've got somebody new. Welcome, Roger. Hello, I'm new to Linux. I'm trying to upgrade my Ionos VPS from CentOS 7 to Elma Linux. I don't have an Etsy yum folder, so the very first command yum update -y won't run. Do you know what I should do? Oh, um, unfortunately, Roger, I've been more on the Debian and Ubuntu side of things for so long. I can't tell you right off the top of my head where to start with that. It seems like from articles I've read and blogs and whatnot, there was some sort of a script out there that you could run to help in that transition. That's about all of the information I remember from that article, because I never actually tried to do that. Um, um, does your VPS provider have any tech support? Can they provide any assistance in making that transition? Um, I wonder though, if you don't have an Etsy Yum folder, I wonder um, if you try running, um, try running the command which yum, and see if it turns if it gives you a path back to the yum utility. This sometimes sometimes they have things in different places, and they don't always have the path mapped properly. So that was sort of my first thought. Does anybody else in the chat have any other ideas off the top of their heads? Um, because it could be, and I'm just spitballing off the top of my very bald head. Um, I'm thinking that it could be something that easy. You know, if you just add it to the path to wherever they do have the yum utility, it may take care of the issue. Um, Beyond that, since I've not done the transition, um, I'm I'm not entirely sure. I wish I had something better to tell you. um, all right, so let me come back up here. Um, oh, both were fun, not run. um, let's see. Off topic, but would you ever do a stream that dives into your music collection, preferred file format, hardware you play them through, etc.? Just digital music focused. Um, I could do that. Um, I could do that. I will. Do I have a pen in my pocket? Um, um, so just the Cliff's Notes version of it. I have DAW file running in a VM with a USB CD DVD drive passed through to the VM for ripping CDs. I rip everything to FLAC, the free lossless audio codec, because from there I can convert it to MP3 or whatever else I want it to be in. Um, I've also got a Dell Optiplex 3020 with a, oh my, what is it? Volumio installed on it, and an inexpensive DAC. It's a Sound Blaster, but it's one of their lower end versions. And I use that hooked into my surround system. Currently is what I've got in the living room to play music back. My goal with this setup is to rid myself of paying for Pandora. I haven't got all the bugs worked out, but it's coming along nicely. It's coming along nicely. Um, but yes, I think delving into that in a little more detail would make for a good topic for a live stream, and something that is not just Linux related. It's something that the software I'm using is more appliance like, I guess you could say. Volumio and DAW file both. Um, so for those unfamiliar, DAW file is here, dawfile.com. And I will note DAW file does have an integration for zero tier. I don't think they mention it here in their documentation, but and still 2101 is the most recent release, which is what I'm running. So where am I? Here. And DAW file's not running currently. So yeah, I could just as easily throw this on a an Optiplex box and have it running off in the corner. For what I'm doing, my plan is to use DAW file mainly for ripping. And then move all of the files over to my Synology NAS, and then the machine in the living room behind me will continue to run Volumio. I like the interface on it. It's got a phone app. It's a nice system. I think they both have their uses. Volumio, and they also make appliances that you can buy with Volumio pre-installed, and they're not for the faint of heart or faint of bank account, shall I say. Looks like their low end version is $800. Oh, I take that back. Yes, the low end version is $800 because the other ones are both sold out. So, but looking at the back of this thing, that has XLR outputs, HDMI, USB. It's got an Ethernet port, digital output, power, and RCA unbalanced. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. um, I have too much music that's not on any streaming services. Yes, I have a lot of that myself. Um, and yeah, a lot of shall we say avant-garde type stuff that I gravitate towards. Like a lot of Frank Zappa music is not available, and I've probably got close to 30 different Zappa CDs, and I know that only scratches the surface of the very interesting and um, unfortunately gone too soon Frank Zappa. Um, you know, his sense of humor while still writing original music and yeah, I don't know. He had a sense of humor. He often asked the question, "Does humor belong in music?" And he predated. I gotta keep using past tense because he's gone. he predated Weird Al, and Weird Al was for a long time mostly covers. And I don't know. I don't know. I still think Frank had a lot more originality than Weird Al does, but I do enjoy my Weird Al. And I guess another shameless plug: if anybody's got Roku, the Weird Al movie is humorous. A lot of cameos that people of my vintage or older would get a laugh out of. So just throwing that out there. Let's see. I had issues in the past with Volumio and the deck I was using. I would play. It would play, then not play. Might revisit. I need a DAC hat for my Pi. Yeah, I had originally wanted to use a Pi for the setup, but when I started pushing towards doing this, the plague was happening, and the source for Pi stuff had dried up, and yeah, so I listen to all genres of music except for a few, hence my collection I built up over the years. Yeah, I've got somewhere between 300 and 500 CDs that I've collected over the years. I really want to get everything digitized so I can pack the CDs away, um, and not have them taking up room in the current display scenario I've got them in. But yeah, I stream music to my Roku sometimes. I've had hit and miss luck with that. I like the setup I've got with the Optiplex with the DAC and running into the back of my surround receiver. Um, it works. It works pretty decent. Like I said, I'm new to Linux. From what I've read, you can view the contents of a thumb drive in an SSH terminal. Um, do you know of a Linux command to run this? Um, so usually you're going to use the ls command, just like you would for listing a directory. Um, Let me jump back over here to my Linux box. Um, and then we'll wrap this up in probably 7 to 10 minutes. um, so, um, yeah, since I'm running this on a VM, I don't have physical access to it where I'm sitting. But um, uh, you would want to find out where that USB drive is mounted. So you'd use the mount command first, which will and this is not formatted very well, um, just because of trying to make it legible. But so you use the mount command first, and you would get usually something in slash media listed, and then you would just type ls slash media slash USB, whatever the name of it is, and it will give you the listing of the contents of that USB drive. Um, so the commands, yeah, the commands are the same. Um, Regardless of whether you're using an SSH session or you're just at the terminal. in this case where I'm at. But I guess the closest thing I could do to simulate this would be if I connect to say DAFile here. Um, so it's got my music. So I would do mount to see where that is mounted. Um, and then let's see. And that not mount. Um, so from the graphical side, it's mounted to SMB colon double forward slash dafile.local slash music. Um, and it's supposed to have an equivalent in the command line. So if we do open in terminal, okay, so yes, that's what I thought. So in this case, it is mounted at run user, the user number, and then GVFS. So if we say cd run user 1000 GVFS, and then we do an ls, and it's in it's there, and then we can list the contents. It shouldn't be as long a path when you're mounting a USB drive, but the concept, conceptually, it's the same. You want to find out what the mount point is, and then you change directories to there, or just do an ls. Like if I was in my home directory, you could do ls/run user 1000 GVFS SMB and it will give you the listing. I hope that helps a little bit. Like I said, since I don't have the machine physically sitting next to me, I can't show you exactly the process. And it could vary just slightly from Ubuntu to CentOS and Alma or Rocky or a Red Hat / CentOS derived distribution. So feel free to reach out to me, Roger. I've got on the community the about tab on my YouTube channel. There is a contact me thing where you can get my email address. Feel free to shoot me an email. I'd be happy to correspond with you and you know, try to help you through some of this if I can. So it's if you're new to Linux, you've got a journey ahead of you, which, you know, I've been talking about things today that I wish I'd known when I was new to Linux, and that was 25 years ago. um, And you know, now it's just trying to keep up with the things that they change, that, you know, I learned one way and they're evolving it to something different. So, you know, if I can share some resources with you, I'd be happy to do so, and, you know, maybe flatten your learning curve a little bit. So I will say there are a huge number of Linux videos on YouTube, and not all of them are mine, admittedly. And it's so much easier to pick things up and drill down to the specific things you want to know now than it was in 1997. So you're in good company here. Happy to help if I can, and happy to share the other channels that might help you along your journey. Um, all right. Brian says I need to rebuild my ripping PC. Yep. Thank you, Tony. Um, all right. I did a video installing zero tier package on DSM-6. Since DSM-7 introduced tighter security, it is only available through Docker. I didn't have a use case at the time, just curiosity. Yeah, I love zero tier. I've been using it on and off for 3 4 years now, since before the plague. Um, so you know, it's very handy utility to have, and I believe it's 25 machines that you can have connected, and still be able to use the free tier. Um, One last question: if you use a key pair, where and how should you store your private key on your PC? I keep mine on the desktop as location for MOBA Xterm. Um, that is a great question, Roger. There are many um, schools of thought on how you should store it. Um, Usually, for what I do, since most of my stuff on Linux is more or less personal, um, I will store it in the default location that OpenSSH puts it in when you create the key. Now, on um, yeah, on if you're using Windows to connect to this, because I'm not familiar with MOBA Xterm, but on a Windows system, I will normally just use SSH from the command line, and create a key using um, the same commands that you would use on a Linux system itself. Um, so I believe that saves in um, .ssh, or I don't have. No, I've got SSH installed. So um, where does that save that? Oh, I just haven't connected to anything. SSH. And yes, I know, don't normally use root to connect. So usually it's in .ssh, and you've got IDRSA and IDRSA.pub. So IDRSA being your private key and .pub obviously being the public key. So that is what I typically do, is store it here. Obviously, you can create more than one key, and best practice dictates, yes, you should do that. I don't always do that for my personal servers that are internal and not exposed directly to the internet. But if I were running it in a business setting, or the server were connected to the internet full time, I would want to create a dedicated key for that server. So that is what I do. But again, let's see. Like I said, let me exit out of this. So even, let's see. If I connect to my sole Windows PC that I've got left, hey, look at that. I've got PowerShell up and ready. Okay, so over here on PowerShell, that's an administrative PowerShell. I don't want that. Just a regular PowerShell, which puts me in my home directory. You'll have the .ssh location, even though it's not hidden under Windows the way it is on a Unix system. Make that a little bit larger so people can read it. But likewise here, I can just connect to that the Proxmox server that I'm running. So obviously on my Windows machine and that brand new Linux VM, I don't have my SSH keys set up like I do on my main systems. So, but I guess in a nutshell, that's what I do. There are white papers out there detailing just how to manage SSH private keys. And I haven't found a single definitive approach that a wide variety of people are taking. And there are, I know, products out there, commercial products out there to help manage SSH keys for larger organizations. So, I hate to be indecisive, but that's the best I can tell you right off the top of my head. All right. Well, I do need to run, Roger. Feel free to shoot me an email if you have any other questions that I might be able to answer. And I'd be happy to correspond with you and, like I said, try to flatten your learning curve a little bit, by passing along some resources. So, but on that note, I do need to go get some lunch so I can jump into another live stream at 2:00. So for everybody that's remaining, thank you all for coming out. And thank you to the people who might have dropped off a little earlier than my finish. I appreciate all of you coming in, and if you haven't, please like the video. Feel free to drop a comment later on, and if you found the information useful, please feel free to share with other people. Good question, Brian. Let me jump back over here. The live stream is going to be on Tony's channel, on the Quick Tech Solutions LLC channel. Helps if I search YouTube and not everything. And oh. Okay, it's this one right here, and I'll drop the link in the chat. So yes, please come on out, and there's the motley crew of 6 that's going to be there in addition to Tony. So there's going to be 7 of us total, and it should be a good time. It should be a good time. We've got some interesting gift suggestions. So I hope to see some of you there this afternoon, and yeah, have a good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to go have some lunch so I can get ready to jump into the next live stream at 2. So thanks, everybody, and I will see you all soon. Have a great afternoon.